Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the General Licensing Subcommittee. First item on the agenda is to elect chair. So could I ask for nominations of chair, please?
Sorry. Councillor Hussain, please.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain, would you like to come and take the chair?
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry we are starting slightly late, but hopefully it'll not be too inconvenient. Can I give you a brief rundown of how the proceedings are going to be run this morning? The licensing officer will present our report at the beginning. Councillors will have an opportunity, along with the legal officers, to ask any questions or seek any clarifications on the report. And then, following that, the representatives who are here, or the objectors, they will have an opportunity to present their case to us. And then similarly, we will all have the opportunity to ask any questions or any clarifications. And then the applicants will have the opportunity to put their case to us. So hopefully, when we've listened to everybody, we will come to a decision, and then we will let you know the outcome of that decision. That okay? That's briefly how it's going to run. So, can I ask everybody to introduce themselves before we actually proceed? I will start with myself. I'm Councillor Fareed Hussain. I represent our regional ward, and I'm chairing this panel this morning.
Good morning. My name's Councillor Harvey Jennings. I represent Chellaston Ward.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Councillor Jangir Khan. I represent Normanton Ward.
Mr. Dessa, I'm the solicitor for the council advising, and I'm also joined by my colleague, Mr. Morgans, who will be observing today.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Emily Nash. I'm here on behalf of the applicant this morning.
Good morning, Chair. My name's Jill Sherratt from Licensing Matters. I'm representing the applicant's bespoke inns.
Okay, shall we? Jackie, would you?
My name's Jackie Waring. I'm the appeals officer.
I'm Anne Walker. I'm representing the licensing team.
Sorry. Morning, Chair. I'm Beverly Smith. I'm representing Mr. and Mrs. Hiron of 5 The Square, Mickleover.
Good morning, Councillor Hussain. I'm Tony Gascoigne and I live at the Hollow, Mickleover.
Good morning. My name's Diane Sunley and I also live at the Hollow, Mickleover.
Good morning. I'm Pamela Pym and I also live at the Hollow, Mickleover.
Thank you very much for your introductions. Mrs. Walker, can I start with you and ask you to present the report?
Sorry, Chair. Can we just run through the checklist on the agenda with apologies, late items and declarations?
Have you got any apologies?
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, late items to be introduced by the chair. I don't have any. Have we got any declarations of interest? No? Okay. We have convened this morning because we have an application, licensing application for premises license at Binary Unit 528 Mikalova, Retail Unit Limes Avenue, Mikalova. Normally, this application will have been dealt with under delegated powers by our officers. And the reason we've had to convene this meeting is because we have received various objections and they need to be looked into and people need to be given an opportunity to present those objections to us for consideration. That's the reason we are here. I'll go back to Mrs. Walker. Could you give us your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yes, the licensing team has received an application for a new premises licence for Binary 528 Mikalova Retail Units, Lime Avenue, Mikalova, Derby, DE3 0GR. The retail sale of alcohol, regulated entertainment and provision of late-night refreshment must be licensed under the Licensing Act 2003. Officers have delegated powers to deal with those applications where there are no relevant representations. However, this is not the case with this application, and that's why we're here at committee today. The application from Bespoke Inns 2020 Limited was received on the 8th of December 2021. A copy of the application is attached to Appendix 1 within the committee report. During the consultation period, the licensing team received 4 relevant representations from other persons and 4 supporting comments. These are attached to the report as appendices 2 and 3, respectively. Since writing the report, extra information has been received from the applicant, which has been distributed to relevant parties. The application in front of you relates to the application for late night refreshment and the supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises. The days and times applied for are listed in section 4.5 of the report, with non-standard timings listed in section 4.7. The proposed designated premises supervisor for the premises is Cara Spence. A location plan of the premises is attached at Appendix 4 for committee's convenience. The committee is obliged to determine the application with a view to promoting the 4 licensing objectives and having regard to the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, the Council's licensing policy and the Human Rights Act 1998. The subcommittee today can decide to grant the application as it stands, modify conditions, or reject part or the whole of the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Are there any questions from councillors to start with to the licensed officer? Mr. Khan? No? I don't have any questions at this stage. Anything?
Yeah, the only observation I would make is you might want to inquire about the other premises that the individuals do own and run. Does licensing have any feedback about how those have been run if it's within our licensing area?
Would you like to comment, Ms. Walker?
Hello. Yes. The other premises run by the company aren't in our area and have no history or dealings with them at all. Thank you.
How long has the license been held by this company? How long have they been running these premises?
This is a new premises license application, so There is no licence, there is no history.
Okay.
Okay.
The microphone. It's your opportunity now to tell us what your concerns are and what is it that you want us to take into consideration when we are considering this application.
Thank you. Shall I go first? Yeah, thank you very much. Well, number 5, the square, has not received any information about the licensing, the prolonged licensing hours, as far as we're aware. Originally, the restaurant was said to be open until 11 o'clock at night. Now that's been extended. And I know Mr. and Mrs. Hiren has received absolutely no documentation to say that it's going to, that application was until 1 o'clock, until they read it on a lamppost. I mean, having said that, I think the concerns from number 5, the square, are that it already, it's so loud, it's so noisy at night time, with glass has been emptied and staff chattering at the back at 9:30 at night. The building will host more than 120 people with 6 parking spaces. And I myself can attest to the fact that it has horrendous, the parking already. And I think with that comes the noise level. This is a conservation area, and already the number of vehicles and the noise is quite loud, with cars parking on WLA lines and all over the place. But more important than that, I think it's the fact that it's actually the noise that affects the young children that actually live in that house, and it is a conservation area. And the concern that if it is open till 1 o'clock, this will only get worse. The noise levels will only increase. So I'd like you to take those points into consideration, please. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Shall we take each representation and then ask any questions and then move on to the next one? Councillor Khan? Can I ask, with the present arrangements as they are,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'll get a bit closer to the microphone. I think I was probably too far away. With the present arrangements as they are, have you had any opportunities to draw your concerns to anyone's attention at the council, or?
I think concerns have been raised all through the building process, to be honest, with various challenges to the build itself. But in terms of the licensing, this is the first time I think they've had the opportunity to come to the council to raise these challenges, really.
Okay. Any questions?
Chair, no, it might be an idea to hear from all the representatives together and then ask the questions once you have that information.
I think the councillors will prefer to ask questions as the...
I don't have any questions.
But I mean, you can save your...
Okay, I don't have any questions of this
no.
objector, no.
Thank you, Chair. We live on the Hollow at Mickleover, and our property's adjacent to the Binary Bar and Restaurant. We're next door neighbours to Mr and Mrs Hiron. And our objection is similar to the proposed extended opening hours of the bar beyond 11 p.m. And for us, that's going to have an impact on our sleep and have a detrimental impact on our well-being, arising from public nuisance and noise because of the operating hours. And as you've heard, the Binary is a new premises. Originally it was shop units, and a secondary application was put in and granted by the council to support the public house and bar and restaurant. But it's right on the edge, and you've got your plans in front of you. It's right on the edge of basically the village district centre. So on 3 sides, it's surrounded wholly by housing. One's a 3-storey block of residential flats. The closest properties are Derby City Council housing. It's mostly occupied by elderly people. And then the remaining side is by basically people who live on the square and the Hollow. And those houses are within the Mickleover Conservation Area. So there are restrictions on how we can mitigate against noise and what we can do. So there are quite stringent conditions placed upon us. And when the council approved the Binary development, the operating times were in recognition of the adjacent residential area. And this was, and I quote from the decision notice by the council's planning, the use of the restaurant bar function room by customers shall not be conducted outside the hours of 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. on any day. The reason to safeguard the residential amenity of nearby occupiers and to accord with the council's adopted local plan policies. At this time, the owners accepted this condition and chose to proceed with the development. Obviously, if this wasn't something they could actually operationally contend with, they could have stopped the development and they could have gone somewhere else. Now, I've had a look around other licensed premises, which I would say were in a similar sort of position to us, and I can give you some examples of where operating times within Derby City have not exceeded 11 p.m. And this includes the Creaky Floorboard on Kedleston Road, which, as people might recall, is basically a conversion to a micropub on the end of a terrace street. This operates till 10 p.m. at night. Little Chester Ale House on Chester Green, which again is adjacent to residential properties, doesn't operate past 11 p.m. The paper mill in Darley Abbey Village, which is probably further away than the Binaries from the properties that surround it, but is obviously in a conservation area where there's no on-street parking and people have got to travel through the village, also operates till 11 p.m. And similarly, about a year ago, the Caillou Metzi Grill opened, and that's the corner of basically Etwell Road and Victory Road. So it's opposite the new development, and that restaurant opens to 11 p.m. in the village as well. I think our concern, again, regards the impact of the ability for people to come and park in Mickleover at night. And, you know, as we've heard, the Binary's got limited amount of parking. I think it's only got 6 public parking spaces and 3 operational parking spaces for staff. Currently, one of those parking spaces has got a skip in it, so that's down to 2. And, you know, according to the planning application, it's a 150-seat bar restaurant. So, you know, potentially there's quite a lot of people who will be going to and sitting in and enjoying the bar restaurant. But prior to the opening of the Binary, there's been a significant increase in the local nighttime economy in the village. As I've mentioned before, a new restaurant has opened, you know, which is basically a stone's throw away from the Binary. We've had a new dessert and coffee shop which opens late at night on the square, which is, you know, just around the corner. As part of the development, a gym's opened, which also has late night sort of operation. And a new micropub has opened on the sort of corner of Station Road and Utoxeter Road. So we've gone from probably very little to actually quite a lot. And that's had a really big impact on parking in the area, and the issues of parking pressures have dramatically increased. And currently, you know, it's only been open a week or so it's very difficult to say. We've had one payday weekend, But on Saturday, there was very little parking available at 10 o'clock at night. We actually went for a walk around and looked at the parking that was taking place. And the only public parking really in the area is on the square and outside the parade. And there was very little parking at 10 o'clock at night because it was all full, because I think of the nighttime economy. And consequently, that's put a real lot of parking pressures on Limes Avenue, the square, the Hollow and the Green. And we live a little away from Utoxeter Road, but parking was going way past our house. And there's 5 cars on Saturday night at 10 o'clock parked past our house. So what we end up with is obviously people leaving these premises, and unfortunately the binaries come last. You know, opening doors, leaving, making a bit of a nuisance. And our homes, like all the homes on the square and on the Hollow, are generally terrace houses, or they front directly onto the street. So we have no front gardens, so we're directly affected by any noise that takes place on the street. And as I said before, particularly, I mean, in our case, our house is listed, so the council imposes restrictions on what we can do in terms of improvements and planning. So we have limited ability to mitigate any extra noise that occurs because of development. And I think we really appreciate the benefits of the development, because, you know, I think it has improved the area and there's a vitality to Mickleover that we perhaps didn't have before. But we just want to be able to enjoy our home without nuisance and noise from customers and staff leaving the premises late at night and the early hours of the morning. And therefore we urge you to support the Council's existing planning conditions and resist extending operating hours beyond 11 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions on what you've heard? Councillor Khan.
I ask Anne, you know, the old planning condition, is that an objective of the old planning condition, which the gentleman just mentioned? Are you aware of that, or is that condition part of the licensing?
Any planning conditions cannot be reflected on licensing. Licensing and planning are 2 separate regimes. Obviously, Mr. Dessa, as the solicitor, may be able to put some more meat on the bones of that.
Yes, Councillor, in terms of, it doesn't limit what licensing can do in relation to that. In terms of why there's been a change of heart in the application, that might be better addressed at the applicant after they've made their representations, if they don't cover it within their representations, because clearly there was a desire for 11 o'clock and that's changed in between. So it might be the case that that's better addressed at the applicant if they don't deal with it in their representations.
Okay. Can I just sum up your objections? And if I've missed anything, you can perhaps put me right. Your main concern is, or anxiety at this stage is, that there is lack of parking at the premises and customers will inevitably end up in adjacent residential streets, and potential noise could emanate when people are getting into their cars, and obviously there'll be some noise generated. And secondly, that you already have evidence of some noise emanating from the premises as they are. Are those two your...
Yeah, I mean, Chair, we've got basically our house fronts onto the front of the Hollow, but it also backs onto the binary car park. So we've only had, I think, had 2 weekends, and this is the first payday weekend where obviously people perhaps go out and, you know, go to restaurants. And it's January, you know, it's a fairly quiet month, but we've already seen evidence that parking that we wouldn't probably have seen before has gone past our house, and it's gone past my next door neighbour's house. And generally gone down the streets, and Limes Avenue was pretty chock-a-block on the first Saturday that I've seen it. So our concerns is, you know, operating to 1 o'clock on a Friday and a Saturday, particularly in the summer when you like to have your windows open, will cause quite a lot of sleep disturbance to us and having a particular impact on our well-being and quality of life. But in terms of evidence, we've only had 2 weekends really to be able to sort of judge that at this point in time.
Could I also add to that as well, just to say about the noise level in the car park from the staff emptying bottles and chatting and smoking in the back of the restaurant. Number 5 backs onto the binary straight onto it, and the noise levels have been quite high already. And if that was to progress even further to 1 o'clock in the morning, it's unacceptable, really. I think Mr. and Mrs. Harron also live in a listed building, and they've done what they can to mitigate the noise, so there isn't anything else that they can do either. So thank you. I'd just like to add those points.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any further questions, or shall we proceed to the next witness? Can we?
As I say, I live on the Hollow, and the binary is about 20 yards away from the end of our garden. The binary stands on higher ground than where we live, and there's no tree cover to deaden any sound. My house is in a conservation area. It's a listed building. The oldest part of the building is dated 1600, and we've had it tree ring dated. I want to emphasise that there's no front garden, and any sound, particularly late at night, it's reflected back off the wall opposite, and it really is quite considerable, and it is inclined to wake people up. Particularly in the summer months, if it's hot weather and we choose to have a window open, which is a reasonable request, I think. But I'd like to start really by saying the binary is in many ways a big asset for the area, and I recognise that. And yes, I have been to it, I've been in it. I've had a cup of tea there last week, and I have to say, I did have a lovely welcome and was shown around the building by Emily. So really, thank you very much for that. But unfortunately, to go back to the objection to the application for late night opening on the grounds of noise and disturbance, I want to make a distinction between general noises and sound during the day. Now, Mikolova is a busy place, and there is a lot of coming and going and general noise, but there's an ability to cut it out during the day because we expect it, and in a way, it's quite nice. However, nighttime noise, that's entirely different. If you can imagine being woken up late at night, say 1 o'clock in the morning, then that is a significant problem. And it does happen because of people coming and going on, and there's no reason why they shouldn't, walking up the pavement and down the pavement and returning back to parked cars. And conversations wake me up more than anything, because you're not expecting them. And late at night, all of a sudden, you're woken up, and then you can't get back to sleep again. So it has got a detrimental effect on people's general health and their mental well-being. I would quite like to find out the actual size of the binary in respect to the number of people that it is allowed to hold. When I was shown round, I had a look at the restaurant upstairs, and that is a 150-seater restaurant. I would add on, there'd be other people downstairs in the bar having a drink, and of course the restaurant, the whole outfit opposite operates with their own staff. So with the 150 restaurant upstairs and the downstairs bit, I think it's 200 people, maybe 250 people. I have tried to find out the exact number on the fire regulations and the public liability insurance. I've not been able to find it out. But the point is that it's a lot of people. So bear in mind, you're talking a lot of people. By extending the licence from 11 o'clock to midnight, that's Sundays to Thursdays, and from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning on Fridays and Saturdays, and also adding on the non-standard times, like the bank holidays, the problem obviously is going to increase. So we're going to have this huge number of people, I don't know how many, and this is on a busy day, say, and where are they going to go to? I mean, some will be on foot, okay. Car parking, as we've said, it just does not exist. On Friday night, I had a walk round Micklover at about 6:30, and I had a look at the public car park, which is behind the old community rooms, and that held 38 cars, but it was full, and not necessarily from the customers at the binary, I didn't feel. The community rooms had got their own event on. And similarly, I went round every sort of car park, including the Nag's Head, their car park was full. What I'm saying is it was busy then. So having said that, I would suggest that it is a significant problem at the moment, but we'll cope with it. And I would urge you not to grant them the application that stands on the grounds of public nuisance. Unfortunately, we don't really know because everything is new, but the signs are that it's not going to be a good idea. It's certainly going to generate noise and disturbance late at night. And just a further thought, I go on to ask whether it's actually necessary for the binary to have a late night licence at all. I've read the paperwork online that refers to it, and I can't actually find any reason why the binary needs to have the extended late night opening hours. And I do feel that the existing restaurants and bars and function rooms round and about, the neighbouring ones, generally speaking, they don't open till 1 o'clock at night. 11 o'clock is their closing time generally, maybe a little bit more, maybe 11:30, maybe 12 for one of them, but certainly not 1 o'clock. And then finally, I am very confused about Derby Local Plan Review and Clause 18, and I'm going to quote, I know it's been quoted once. The use of restaurant, bar, function rooms by customers shall not be conducted outside the hours of 8 in the morning and 11 o'clock at night on any day. Just to sum up, I do welcome the binary. I think it's going to be a good thing for Micklover. I certainly do not think that this licence, as it stands, should be granted for the reasons that I've given. And I suggest that the application should be turned down. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Chair, just a general question to the objectors. During the planning stage for this restaurant, have any of you attended the planning committee where it was placed? and therefore tell me why it was restricted to 11 o'clock at planning.
Would you like to answer that?
Hi, Chair. My understanding was it didn't go to planning committee, so it was an officer's decision. So we did make representations. I'm trying to think what we actually said. I think we supported the pub, but we didn't want certain elements of noise associated with the ventilation, and we were pleased to see that the operating times and operational restrictions on it were acceptable, I think, at that point in time. And obviously, one of our issues is, well, because the goalposts potentially have moved, we wouldn't have any opportunity to object to that, but more vociferously at the time around that, because obviously that was what was put forward as part of the planning application and accepted by the applicant at that point in time.
Okay, if there are... Did you want to say something?
Yes, I think it'd be useful for the objectors to list the types of noise or nuisance they've witnessed after 11 p.m. and where they're originating from. I think that will assist you when you're considering your decision.
Yes, obviously. Do you want to comment on it?
From number 5, the square, so it's been chatting at the back of the binary by staff, bottles been emptied, and if that's going to be past the 1 o'clock, then tidying up till 2 o'clock in the morning. It's been car noise, it's been noise from the extractor fans, the ventilation systems, people chatting, shouting, general noise from vehicles.
Can I ask whether you've heard noise emanating from inside the restaurant during those hours? Or is it all when people are out in the backyard or having a cigarette outside or trying to get into their cars? Could you comment on that?
Well, I have to say that the actual operational noise from people inside the public house is actually quite quiet. But we do get, again, this sort of droning noise because the ventilation units have been elevated. They were originally going to be on the ground floor and behind a 3-metre retaining wall, but it's been put on top of the building, as you know, it's been pointed out that is higher than our properties, so it does emanate, but not from people actually in the bar. It's from people leaving the bar and staff doing operational things, and the bins are in the car park outside, basically on 2 sides of it. So it's that kind of noise, and obviously then customers who are leaving. But you know, so it's only been open 2 weekends, so it's, you know, we haven't got a whole track record of history because that's not the opportunity that we've had at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to say something?
We've already explained about the decision notice and the condition put on with regards to the hours. So we've heard from is it Anne to say that the actual planning decision notices and the application for the licensing is completely different, so they're not bound by each other. So what I don't understand is why then would the council put on this condition if then it doesn't really make any difference to an application for a licence?
If the council has put any conditions, then the expectation is that those conditions are abided by. And the reason they do that is to perhaps minimize something or try and eradicate the potential concerns that might have been drawn to council's attention. That's the purpose. But
Chair, if it assists, the planning department is one of the responsible authorities who could have attended today to make representations if they wanted to. they've chosen not to. So in that sense, Anne can't go behind that. Miss Walker, sorry, can't go behind that.
Could I just ask for you to repeat that again, please? Because when you turn your face away from the microphone, I couldn't hear half of what you were saying. Thank you.
Okay, apologies. Yes, just to outline, there are responsible authorities who can attend and make representations at this hearing. The Planning Department is one of those, and looking at the response here, they have no response to the application. So if they had concerns in relation to that, I would have expected them to attend and make their representations to the panel today.
Can I just say that I think that the consensus was that the council had made the decision that it was open until 11 o'clock, and it was only until we read on the lamppost to say that it was going to be the request and application had been made till 1 o'clock that we understood there was an extension of that. I don't think we understood that an extension had been applied for until that point, and certainly no communication had been made to that effect.
Okay, that's fair enough. Sorry. I've not got used to the system either. If there are no further questions, then can I ask the applicants to present their case and bear in mind the comments that have been made by the residents. So over to you then.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name's Jill Sherratt. My company is called Licensing Matters, and we're representing Bespokins. I have with me here a director of Bespokins, Emily Nash. I'm going to give you the case, obviously, and she'll be able to answer any more directly operational questions that you might have operational issues that you might have questions about. I will, while it's been the conversation most recently, just deal with the issue of planning. As you have heard from Ms Walker from your licensing, and I do believe you're legal, that planning and licensing are completely separate regimes, and you don't have to limit licensing hours just because the planning are limited. We're entitled to apply for later hours. It was advertised. I'm sure your licensing officer will confirm that in accordance with the regulations. So the application is being made regardless of what the planning sets down. And so it is there in front of you. It's 1 o'clock, 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock Friday and Saturday, midnight all other days of the week, and you've heard the comment that you can see no reason for the late night hours. Well, there's an awful lot of people who enjoy being out, do see reason for going out till potentially those hours. As you know, as an experienced licensing committee, you'll know that we apply for those hours. It doesn't mean that everybody stays until 1 o'clock and all leaves at one time. The opposite is in fact true. But people do enjoy being out later, and the Licensing Act was brought in to accommodate that back in 2005. It released the standard hours and allowed people, as you know, to apply for 24 hours if they wanted to, so that the late night economy could thrive. So this application is fairly conservative if you take into account the bigger picture. I'm not going to refer to parking in any way. It's not relevant to licensing. We're here to deal with the licensable activity of selling alcohol. And you've seen, and I hope you've had a look at the information that I put forward for you. It gave you a bit of background about the owners and what this application is all about, but I will just summarise some of it for you. Bespokins are extremely experienced operators in the hospitality industry, and I know you asked, have we any other in our area, but actually, I don't know exactly which council area they're in, but you do have 3 other premises that they manage with very, very similar hours, late hours as this one. You have the Boot at Repton, the Dragon at Willington and Harper's in Melbourne, all of which are in very, very similar locations to this. They're in conservation areas. They have close by residents living next door, and they have no problems with those 3 venues. They also own an event catering company. So Binary is their latest venture. I hope you've had a look at the photographs and seen the standard of the venue that they've created. Purpose-built restaurant over 2 floors, a casual restaurant downstairs, which is where people come in and that's where the bar is, and then a more refined restaurant up on the 1st floor. The company, just to give you a little bit of background, the MD and everyone within any management role has got bags of experience, over 15 years in terms of the MD. The person that you want to know about specifically here is the DPS, Cara Spence. She has over 12 years experience alone working for a hotel group who operated several prestigious hotels and restaurants in Derbyshire. She will be the full-time manager here. She's full-time. In control day to day. She'll be there at all the busy periods, and she will be supported by equally experienced managers. You'll have your deputy manager, your front of house manager, your bar manager, and moving on from them, you'll have 24 staff of all ages and experiences in support, taking up their roles, whatever that may be, front of house, behind the bar. So the number of local people that are employed here, the contribution of this business to the economy of Mickleover is significant. Now, in terms of what you need to hear today in assessing this licensing application is whether the licensing objectives will be upheld. So there's a full CCTV system with numerous cameras both inside and out. If you want to know anything more specific, I would ask you to ask Emily about that. Challenge 25, staff training, refusals register. It's all in there on the application. And often we put licensing applications in and we talk to the authorities after the event. In this case, the police were fully consulted before this application went in, and the conditions that you see in the application came from that consultation with the police. So they're very, very comprehensive, and they formalise all of the procedures and policies and equipment that you would expect to ensure that the licensing objectives are upheld. And obviously the conditions become binding on bespoke inns if you grant this licence today. So the application is very robust indeed, and deals with all of the issues that are relevant in general to a venue of this nature. Now, in terms of what specifically you're dealing with here, the prevention of public nuisance objective is the one that's engaged here today. And I want to start by saying to the residents that Bespoke Inns completely understand anxieties and concerns from residents. Obviously, I'm not dealing with what's been going on historically with the planning. We are here now to deal with what might arise from a grant of a licence. And they do understand, but they are an extremely considerate operator. And that track record is there for you to draw upon over 10, 15 years from their other venues in these similar areas, village locations. Their experience at those sites means that in drawing on that experience, they don't anticipate that there will be any problems at Binary. Staff chatting, we've heard, and it is useful to hear of these things and emptying bottles. Now, I can point you in direct response to that, to two conditions that have been offered on the licence. And actually, it might be helpful because we can alter one to make it even more controlled. And that is the disposal of waste and bottles shall not only take place between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Now we can alter that to 9:30 p.m. if you wish. That will become binding on Binary, on Bespoke Inns from today. It is already on there, but if they're more than happy to say that they will not empty any bottles after 9:30. We also have a condition here that people, with the exception of customers wishing to smoke, the outside areas of the premises shall not be used after 2200 hours each day. You know, the other thing that can be done are notices, and that people to respect the neighbours as they enter and leave. But just to come to the reality of a situation like this, and again, I do appreciate that it's an unknown for residents, but this is a restaurant. Okay, and people who go to a restaurant go in 2s and 3s and 4s or whatever group that they're in. And when they've had their meal over 2 to 3 hours, they leave the area. They don't stand around chatting. They leave and they walk and drive home. I don't intend to deal with traffic and parking, as I've said. Another point for you to consider, given the background and experience of both Bespoke Inns and the other premises that they operate, is the type of clientele that this venue will attract. It's high-end. You can see that from the photographs. And they will attract more mature type of customer, couples, small groups who are coming out to enjoy the food. They're coming out to enjoy the quality meal. Obviously, alcohol has to be part of that. And that's the reason for the application. But Binary is a high-end venue and the clientele will reflect that. To move to planning just really briefly, and I'm grateful for the comment that the application has gone out to consultation to all of the authorities, no less than 10 authorities in total. Your planning officer hasn't made any objection. And what happened at the last stage of planning was, and I do think noise had been addressed initially, but then the planning officer wasn't happy, said, I want more from you. Go away and get me a noise report. And that is exactly what Bespoke Inns did. I have it here. You're not going to want to read the whole thing. I didn't think it was appropriate to put that in, but I did put in the letter from the planning officer. And basically, the noise impact assessment was undertaken, and the conclusion was that no unacceptable impact on the amenity of local residents was expected from the breakout of internal trading noise. And planning accepted that, they took that into account. But the crucial point here is that they took that into account and specifically referenced the licensing hours, including the 3 a.m. New Year's Eve, 1 a.m. At a weekend, and they accepted that there would be no concern. They accepted that the requirement to not just undertake the report, but to accept the report had been discharged fully. That is within the framework, within the context of this licensing application that you are hearing. I've said pretty much everything there that I need to. I think just in terms of the legal points, I know you'll be aware of this, Chair. I just want to put a little context in terms of the legalities of this application. I've already said planning and licensing are separate regimes. Parking's not relevant. In terms of licensing, and we did hear about, we don't know what's going to happen. Well, that is exactly what the licensing regime is there to deal with. It is a permissive regime. This is stated case law. Thwaites made this binding on us all. It's permissive, so you can allow these applications to go through into the later hours or for whatever's applied for, because there is the power of reviewing licensing. It's not like planning. Any authority or resident can have Bespoke Inns back in front of you within approximately 6 weeks if there are problems. And within that judgment, the judge made it clear that speculation is not a reason to base a decision on. So I would ask you to grant the licence in the full terms that it's been applied for. Obviously, the conditions, you can look at those in detail. And I would just leave you with another judgment that Justice Black made on that day, and that was that the stance of the authorities, the people who are your main advisors in licensing, should weigh heavily upon you. And I would just direct you to the fact that environmental health, so planning haven't been involved, but your environmental health officers have raised no concerns to this application either. So that's my presentation. Obviously, we're more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, you've tried to address some of the issues which have been drawn to our attention by the concerned residents. Whether you could comment on customers potentially popping out for a cigarette, having a chat, and the noise spilling out and disturbing the residents. Is that something you could do?
Absolutely, and obviously it's a common concern, obviously, when the smoking ban came in. What the company have done, and I know Emily can answer this, but I'll just tell you what I know, and then she can jump in. They're not allowed to drink outside. There's high tables with no chairs, an ashtray. They go out, they smoke, they come back in, and that is the procedure. So I don't know if you want to add to that at all.
I don't think there's very much to add to that, but what I would add is on Saturday night, I was myself at the venue working, and there were very few people going out for a cigarette. That if they were going out on their own or in twos. And as Jill's just said, we were not allowing them to take any alcohol out with them. So they were nipping out, they were coming back in. We've also positioned the tables away from where, on the far side at the front of the building, so that they're as far away from residents as we can have them, given the position of our building. That's it, sorry.
Councillor Khan.
Chair, you mentioned that you're going to reduce timing for staff smoking. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're going to reduce time for staff smoking outside the premises. So how will you monitor that? But obviously your staff who wants to go and have a cigarette after that time, then they will have to go at the front.
No, it wasn't in relation to staff smoking. The reduced time that I offered was in relation to the disposal of waste and bottles. But I'll let Emily address the issue of staff smoking for you, yeah.
So actually, oddly, we only have one member of staff currently who smokes. I mean, I know that won't necessarily be an ongoing or permanent situation, but it is a phenomenally small number of staff who currently smoke. Our manager is highly competent and highly responsible, and if we say that it's a condition, or that you're not allowed to go around the side or the back of the building, be having conversations, making noise, or anything like that, I'm confident that we can ensure that that is the case.
Thank you.
Councillor Jennings.
Thank you. I noticed from your application that you have not applied for playing music. Is that the current intention and the future intention?
I think as Jill has mentioned, we've tried to be considerate of the local residents in this application. We made a conscious decision not to apply for entertainment, and we have no current plans to apply for entertainment at a later date, out of that consideration for the residents.
Could I ask a question, please? Is that permissible?
I'll allow you to.
Thank you. I just wonder when the noise assessment was done, because I understand that was completed before the place was opened, and therefore wasn't representative of the levels of noise that actually occur.
So, I mean, I'm not a sound. I don't know very much about the noise and the way that they're conducted, but they had all the information. The sound system was fully installed so that they were able to go outside and judge those, and obviously they use their scales and their standard information based on the build. And I mean, as one of the residents has said, the breakout noise from the building has been limited.
Yeah, the point I'm making is that the assessment wasn't made when the bar was open and the restaurant was open, so it was actually quite quiet when the assessment was completed.
Yeah, all we can say about that is it's dated January 2022. That's all we can say.
Do you have any questions at this stage?
No, Chair, I don't.
Okay. In that case, then.
Excuse me, could I ask a question? Thank you. I've just noticed the application, it includes the sale of late night alcohol for consumption off the premises. Does that need to stand? Is it necessary for the binary to actually be selling alcohol up to 1 o'clock at night for someone to buy and then come and drink it as they walk home?
Yeah, it certainly is. It's for people who might not finish a bottle of wine, an expensive bottle of wine, and they might want to take it home.
Oh. But would that convene the regulations and the licence if they did take it home? because they would have bought it and opened the wine and started to drink it when the licence was okay before 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it's perfectly legal. Off sales means that you're taking basically an open container from a licensed premises, and it's to cover that eventuality.
Yeah, but I'll just ask this, that it seems to be that you are able to vary different points of the licence based upon discussion. Would you be able to vary that?
Well, people can drink on the premises, so they can drink alcohol while they're having a meal, and people can drink the alcohol, they can take the alcohol off the premises, so that's why you apply for both, which is perfectly standard. All pubs and on-licences are licensed for both activities.
But if somebody came off the street who'd never had any meal in your place, they just came off the street and used you as a shop for buying alcohol.
The anxiety here is, will you be acting as an off license, like
No, it's a restaurant, it's not an off licence.
And I think it would be highly unlikely that people would use us as an off licence, because obviously it would be significantly more expensive for people to come and buy a bottle of wine from ourselves than going to an off licence or to Tesco's, which is just around the corner.
But Tesco's may not be open at 1 o'clock or even 3 o'clock.
I think we've answered that question.
Okay, thank you.
I think now we can proceed towards summing up. So can I start with you, Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing further really to add, only to remind the subcommittee that the options open to them today are listed in 1.4 of the committee report. Thank you.
Can I ask you to sum up, one of you, or one or two of you?
Yeah, I think in summary, I think we've had a little opportunity to sort of witness the impact on our well-being and the nuisance caused by the pub. But just in sort of one payday weekend, we have experienced sort of noise from staff. We've experienced people leaving and parking and creating noise from when they've left the public house and the premises. And our concerns really are about the very late opening times, which is completely out of step with the other restaurants and public houses that are in Mickleover. And I think the difference I would like to say to this restaurant is the premises that are in the Bespoke Inns run in other parts of the Derbyshire. They're existing public houses, so people have bought the houses knowing what the disturbance is going to be. This is something that has never been before. So I think it is a different case to sort of saying, well, actually, that's all fine, whereas, people have known that they were buying a house next door to a bar, restaurant, public house.
I'd just like to make a comment that we have to stick to the licensing objectives when we are considering objections. And strictly speaking, some of the objections that you've had might not strictly fall under the licensing objectives, but anyway, we'll have that chat later.
Really, really quickly, Chair, thank you. And really, to come off the point you've just made there is what is this forum here to deal with? Public nuisance, but really even more specifically than that, it's simply about people leaving and will they generate any noise. And I just ask you to consider the type of venue this is. It's high-end, upmarket feel, the type of clientele that attend those types of properties, the experience and the impeccable track record of Bespoke Inns in very, very similar, regardless of how long the pubs and the houses have been there, they operate without complaint and have done for many, many years in similar residential locations. The position of your planning officer who's assessed the terms of this application, even the later hours, and they are happy, the position of all the other authorities, including the Environmental Health Officer. And, you know, again, and it's quite a reasonable comment, and it's completely taken on board that the residents, they haven't had the opportunity to experience the impact, and I get that completely, but that is exactly how the Licensing Act is framed. It's there to allow it, because review can happen just like that, and then you can remedy it if there are any problems. But I think, I hope you can see that given the very robust application, the conditions and the background and experience of the operators, that there will be no problems here, and I'd ask you to grant the licence in the terms that it's been asked for. Thank you.
Just for the ease of people here, can I just paraphrase what you've just said? If license is granted as applied, then if people have any problems with it, they can always write into the authority, and the authority can convene a review to consider the issues that have been highlighted and then decide how best they're dealt with. So, Councillor Jennings, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Just before we finish, I'd just like to ask the objectors if they've heard anything during this meeting from the applicants that allay any of your fears.
From my perspective, no. I think that the noise is loud, the noise of staff chatting, even though one person smokes. That's not to say that the clientele don't go to the back and smoke. I think it is a concern, and if any of the last 2 weeks is anything to go by, it's unacceptable, and people get louder and louder. And I really have to question, when you talk about the clientele and the type of clientele, are you implying that that means that they're not noisy? I'm not quite sure what that means. And I think that I'd like to refer you back to some of the comments that were said before in terms of, you know, the quality of life of people that live around this area. And I think that although an 11 o'clock licence would be great, I don't think you've said anything to allay our concerns.
Respond, please, to that additional submission.
Normally this process doesn't allow for that sort of interest, but I've been very flexible, so I'll allow you to respond. Because
It's okay. Yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to say that the allegation of the noise is not accepted. I don't believe this lady has witnessed it for herself. We do not accept that there's been any noise from the premises. But one thing I did want to say, and I didn't, was that moving on from here and walking out that door, I think certainly I know one lady's met Emily already, and Emily's going to be available to them, and Bespoke Inns will be available to them at all times should there be any problems, to work together to do whatever they have to. So I just wanted to say that in response. Thank you.
Thanks.
Under the present conditions with COVID and everything, it's probably better if we email the decision out as soon as possible. Okay?
Yes.
The licensing team would normally email out all the decision notes to all relevant parties after the committee hearing.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for your contributions and coming to the council, asked to put your case.